welcome to the Skill of the Month Club. I'm Esther Emery and I am your Master of Ceremonies as we go through 12 skills in 12 months. I am a little late today and a little tired at the moment that I was going to do the video. Usually these come out on Thursdays. Yesterday, one of my goats started kidding. So we have two little bucklings and we have a mom with the maternal instinct of a galactic stormtrooper. So I spent some time in the barn last night trying to get everybody to do what they're supposed to do, and I'm headed back down there in a minute. The good news about that is that this is a morning video, and so you get to hear the crackling of the rocket mass heater, the fire next to me, and at the end of the video I'll give you a sneak peek at our goats. Although they have nothing to do with the topic, baby goats sure are cute. We're still on old-fashioned cooking this month. I'm going to show a book that I strongly recommend that everyone go out and purchase immediately if you're interested in old-fashioned cooking. And also I'm going to tell a story. So if you are the sort who likes to have a little yarn arts or piecework while I'm telling a story, this is that kind of video. Before I do that though, a couple of items of business. I want to make sure if anyone is new who hasn't been around for other videos of the Skill of the Month Club that I just tell you what it is. We're a group of people trying to share skills regarding self-sufficiency and simple living and agrarian values. And we're going to go through skills not only in an incremental way, meaning that we add a little bit at a time so we can look back at the year and see that little things can add up to a lot of change. But also we're working on how to fit things together with the season. So realizing that a dish that's very simple to prepare in August is very expensive and difficult to prepare in February, and vice versa. And that's also true of the skills of an agrarian lifestyle. It really matters what season you're in. And of course, if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, you all think we're crazy. You just have to reverse everything by 6 months. And I know some of you are also in equatorial climates, in tropical climates, and of course you can appreciate a lot of what we're doing, but not the specifics of what skill goes with what month. The other thing I wanted to do on that note is to give people a little bit of a sense of where we're headed. I don't want to set up a whole syllabus. I want there to be room for change, but I do want people to have an idea of what's coming. So January we started with planning and preparedness. January, the month of planning. This month we're doing cooking, and of course I'll talk more about that in this video. Next month in March we're going to talk soil and seeds, getting your garden started, getting your greenhouse started, all the things you need to think about to get that food producing garden that you're dreaming of. And in April we're going to do what I call Introduction to Animals. There's going to be some information about keeping animals, and particularly the babies that are popping up in the springtime, but also we're going to talk about kitchen skills for animal products. So dealing with milk and butter and cheese and a lot of eggs, other things that are available in the spring. And thank goodness we're finally going to get to our first, what many people are excited about, yarn arts project in April, when we start to talk about fiber arts and natural fibers coming from animals. So that gives you an idea of where we're headed. I'm already out of breath, but I'm excited to show you the best book for old-fashioned cooking. As many of you know, I am a writer. I am the child of a writer. I am the sibling of writers. I have a whole family of people who love words and books. So I'm rather picky about books and also have a great love for books. I've decided to make it a feature of the Skill of the Month Club that each month, for each skill, I'm going to feature one absolute favorite book. Because I know it can be hard when you're looking at all the different sources of material for homesteading, just to possibly decide where to go. And I know that people are tempted to just keep all that information on the internet. The internet has everything. I'll always have that. But I actually really encourage people to develop a library of information that you need for your homestead life or for your self-sufficient agrarian life, because certainly for a grid down situation you'd have that material at hand, but also your brain works a little differently when you're working with analog material than if you're looking at a screen, or particularly a networked screen. So you may find that you're more attentive and more able to absorb and embrace information when it comes from a book. So I'll continue to offer book recommendations throughout each month, but for each month I will also pick out my one absolute favorite, and this month that is A Cabin Full of Food by Marie Beausoleil. I just found this book completely by accident. You can see it's still pretty shiny. It's a new book. not kitchen ruined at all, but I read through it like it was a novel. I just turned the pages, and I love this book. I can't recommend it highly enough. We've talked already about this idea of old-fashioned and simple cooking. I strongly encourage folks to be able to look at some ingredients and understand how they go together, because if you're working from food storage, if you're working from your own materials, you need to be able to substitute. You need to be able to efficiently and with a sense of control and empowerment put things together in a way that makes sense to you. So you need that kind of basic information. This is a treasure trove of basic recipes. It's not that they're not good, and it's not that they're not real recipes or it's not real cooking, but it's not opaque. It's transparent how things work. Another recipe book that we like around this house is America's Test Kitchen. And we love America's Test Kitchen because everything is articulate. You know, you see why. There's always a little bar that says this is why we did it, and the science is very clear, and I love it. But I can't cook any of the recipes because they have tons of cheese in them, and they all have ingredients from the store, and they're expensive. It's not true. We do cook a few of the recipes, but this is a recipe book that's written with that kind of information, but also particularly for people who are working with food storage. 2 reasons I knew I was going to love this book. I've actually heard the Irish saying that this title comes from, "A cabin full of food is better than a hungry castle." When I saw the title, I thought, oh, I wonder if that's what she's referring to, and I'm pretty sure it is. Couldn't agree more. Cabin full of food is exactly what my dream for my life and my family is. So I like the title, and then I flipped to the very first page, and she's got a calendar. She's got a calendar and a sense of which things you should be doing for what season. She's got a column for spring and summer and autumn and winter, and I thought, oh, this is us. This is what we're doing. How perfect. And then I just read the rest. Like I said, I turned the pages. I read it like a novel. And I recognize a lot of what she's written here. A lot of what she's written here is just how you do things in terms of how you prepare grains and vegetables. And she's got great cheese recipes in here and a lot of canning, a lot of understanding how to get food right out of the garden and figure out what to do with it and how to make that last through the entire year. So that was a lot of words. Marie Beausoleil's A Cabin Full of Food. I'll put a link below, which will be an affiliate link. So a few cents of the purchase would go to me, and the rest would go to Marie Beausoleil, who is also a blogger. And she's not living off-grid right now, but she has lived off-grid. We probably have a lot in common. I hope I get to meet her someday. So that's our book recommendation. Well, now we come to the story part of the video. I want to share with you a story, but I hope it illustrates a couple of points. One of them about trusting your instincts in the kitchen, and another about eating seasonally. And also it might explain why I chose February to be the month of old-fashioned cooking. I have someone in my family who has been to culinary school. So she and I have had some great conversations about food. But when I was not a confident cook, which is a big chunk of my life that I was not a confident cook, she said something to me that unfortunately I kind of let it name me. She talked about how most people either overspice their food or underspice their food, and I kind of musingly thought, oh, I wonder which one I am. And she answered a little too quickly that I am someone who overspices the food. I thought, well, of course I'm someone who overspices the food. I'm the kind of person who goes for a year without the internet. I'm a big person. I'm a big, energetic, loud person. Of course I overspice my food. And I felt kind of sheepish about it, and I thought, okay, so I'm not going to, when I make my food, I'm not going to overspice it. I'm going to be better. I'm going to be a good girl, right? So fast forward a little bit to when to an experience which I think was one of my favorite moments in the kitchen ever. At that point, I was trying to make recipes from a gourmet cookbook because I was still in the mode where I thought, if I'm going to spend all evening in the kitchen, it needs to be something extraordinary, right? I need to come up with something that could be the cover of a magazine. So I was making kind of fancy recipes, and it was a gourmet soup with black-eyed peas and a lot of turmeric, and it ended up with a really bold yellow color. And also it was intended to be a little spicy. Well, as I was making it, as I was preparing it in the kitchen, I can't tell you what my thought process was, but I doubled the amount of jalapeno pepper. I sort of thought, well, you know, 1 is good, 2 is better, why not 4? I don't remember how many it was, but I put a lot of jalapeno pepper in this soup. My brother was over, and he didn't mind. He thought it was funny. He helped me to put some sour cream on it to balance the heat and also to serve it with bread. And we ended up actually really enjoying the soup. And as I was tasting that soup, as I was sitting down to taste that soup that I had theoretically wrecked by not following the recipe, I had theoretically wrecked by overspicing, by being too much of who I am and too much of everything, I was almost the happiest I've ever been as a cook. Because you know what it did for me? It opened the lines of communication. It made it so that I could hear, feel, taste what the food was doing. I hope that there aren't very many other people who have felt like this, but I definitely went through a period where I felt like food just didn't speak to me. You know, here are these other cooks who it talks to them and they know what to do and they feel things. And I just didn't feel anything in the kitchen. I just kind of looked at it and it all looked dead and there was no language and there was no communication. And that moment when I put too many jalapenos in my yellow bean soup, my gourmet soup, I felt the communication opened. I thought, I did that. That was a choice that I made to make this soup super spicy, and that's what it is. And even if someone else wouldn't have liked that, I did like it. And it ended up really completely opening the gate for me in terms of scratch cooking and enjoying cooking after literally a decade of feeling like cooking was for everybody in the world but me. There's one more part to this story. This all happened 8-9 years ago. And since then, I've become interested in herbal remedies and herbalism and how to take care of yourself with spices and herbs. And I've learned how to understand that there are different temperaments, different physical temperaments. And if anybody else has studied herbalism, then you know what I'm talking about here. There are different constitutions. And when you're working with herbs, which tend to be quite subtle and specific, it really matters what a person's temperament is. Well, I started looking into my physical temperament, and I tend to be cool and I tend to be damp, which means that particularly in the late winter and early spring, what I need in order to keep my system in balance and to stay healthy is, guess what? Heat. I literally need cayenne and turmeric and hot spices to help me to stay healthy and to counteract some common ailments that I've often had, including respiratory system problems like chronic bronchitis and asthma that have been difficult for me in the damp, cool months, because that's how my body tends. And I just love to realize that even at that moment when I was doubling the jalapeno pepper, cooking in winter with my brother, wanting hot, hot food, that wasn't because I was too much. It wasn't because I overspiced my food. It was because I had an instinct that I needed something. My body needed that flavor, that kind of assistance that I could get from that particular food, from the jalapeno pepper. And my body was able to say, do a lot of that. And then that sense of satisfaction that I was able to get from that really opened this line of communication. So again, I will say, I hope that you are not someone who has ever felt like food doesn't talk to you. But if you are, maybe go ahead and overdo something. Go ahead and oversalt it so you taste what you did. Go ahead and do it wrong so that you can see what you did. Go ahead and take a little bit of a risk and get yourself freed from whatever chains are making it so that you and your food can't be a team for promoting your own health and happiness. And maybe on the other side of that is your own kitchen magic. Well, that was quite a lot of talking, and I have to get back to the barn. I'm sure you all have places to get back to too, but I won't leave you without a few practical words. I have 5 tips written out here of what I think you can do right now to become a master of your kitchen and to have some confidence with scratch cooking and to be able to cook simple foods that really satisfy. Number 1 tip. Did you know this was coming? Buy this book and work through it like a textbook, or read it like a inspiration manual. It's really a great book. Marie Beausoleil's The Cabin Full of Food. That's my number 1 tip for mastering the kitchen. Number 2 tip is to decide on one or a few food structures in which you can replace ingredients. So I talked about in the previous video about my no recipe soup. I love soups. I'm a soup person. My husband does a lot of the cooking in our house, which is great. And when it's time to do a soup, I kind of scoot over. It's soup time. That's my thing. So that's one place in which you can have a good idea of how the soup works and then replace ingredients and get an idea of how many options there are working within that little structure. Another way to do that is with a rice dish. You can start with your fat and then your aromatic vegetables and then your rice, and you can do that in any number of different arrangements. You can decide on a day of the week when you're going to do that rice dish and then do something different each week so that you gather skills and understanding of how different vegetables and different spices treat you and what you like best and what you like best at what time of year. You can do it with eggs. We do a thing called loaded eggs, which just means eggs with whatever. Often the leftovers from the day before, since we don't have a refrigerator, we have to reuse that food right away. So some options for a dish that you can make over and over again with variations are a soup, a rice dish, an egg dish, or a hamburger dish, a ground meat dish. And maybe choose a day of the week that you make each of those things. And then each time that you're going to do it, you know what the sequence is going to be. And so what varies are the ingredients. That's my number 2 tip. Okay, number 3, prepare things in advance. You'll hear on even very mainstream kitchen recommendations that you need to keep a clean kitchen and you need to get your things set up in advance. And I think that's really true, actually. I don't always agree with everything in terms of what gourmet cooking ought to be. I think some of it's just intimidating. But I do think it's really helpful to keep a clean kitchen and to do some things in advance, especially if you don't have very strong knife skills. And that's something that comes with practice. Being able to kind of set up all your stuff before you turn the heat on at the pan, I think is a really good strategy. And one of the ways that I do that is by pressure canning. You know, if I'm not going to be able to make it through a complex dish, well, I have my pre-cooked potatoes and my pre-cooked carrots, and often certainly my broth all ready to go. So getting parts of the recipe prepared in advance really coincides with the goal of food storage in a beautiful way. My number 4 tip is to keep records. If you're not working from a recipe, then you need to be working from your own observation. You don't want to just be out there in the world kind of not having any record of things that you do. So I recommend that you have a kitchen scale, that you do use measuring cups, and that you write down in some way in your journal or in your binder, if you did something you really liked, write it down so that you can repeat it next time. This is the way of getting in charge of our own information. Rather than letting somebody else decide what's important information, we decide, we keep it in our own hands and our own control, and that's part of being empowered to control our own food destiny. And then the number 5 tip is to be kind to yourself. Our culture's kind of cruel about food, especially when you get into issues of economics and body image. It's really easy to have shame triggers regarding food, and we don't need to be a therapist here, but just do respect that there can be pain, there can be kind of hidden memories around food. So if you find that something feels really hard or really sad, don't decide that it's your fault. Don't decide that you've done something wrong. Just be gentle and try to think of the food as healing. And that is all I have time for. Thank you so much for hanging out with us at the Skill of the Month Club as we're doing old-fashioned cooking. I can't wait to hear what you make this weekend, whether it's a roast or something with the hot spicy, with the hot winter spices. I'm sure I'll see lots of pictures on our Facebook page, but also feel free to comment below and let me know how it's going. Happy cooking. We'll see you next time.